Welcome, everybody, to the Life, Death, and Happiness podcast. This is all about real talks with real people from all around the globe. In each episode, I will sit down and talk with a friend about how it is to live with an incurable disease or maybe even a terminal illness. And let me get this straight while we're at it. This is all about celebrating life. My name is Daniel Kolb, and I'm your host. Welcome to this week's episode. And with me today, I have a very, very special guest. It's Allison from St. Paul in Minnesota, if I remember it correctly. Hi and welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad you could join. And can you tell us a little about yourself to begin with?
Sure. So I am married to Sean. Sean and I were high school sweethearts. And in about 9-10 years ago, Sean was diagnosed with Fanconi Anemia. Mm-hmm. And since then, we have basically just been living a pretty, like a medical roller coaster, I would say, with probably more downs than ups for the last 9 years. He had a bone marrow transplant. He's had 7 types of cancer. He got his hip replaced. He's had cataract surgery. He's been in the hospital countless times. And so that's a huge part of our life at this point. And so I can sort of consider him, I consider myself a caregiver in some places because I do a lot to manage all that is involved in his really complex medical story. But on top of that, I am also a mom. We have a 12-and-a-half-year-old daughter, Maya, who is adopted from Haiti and just finished 7th grade. And then I work on top of that as well. So I work for an AmeriCorps program where I teach people how to tutor children in literacy. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, I'm also trying to be a writer. So I am spending a lot of time trying to just write about the experiences that Sean and I have been having throughout this illness. And just finding that there's a lot of people out there who are also dealing with serious illness and are really benefiting from hearing more stories about, what that looks like from the inside.
That's also why I really wanted to talk to you, because it's one thing to feel it on your own body, to have Fanconi anemia or cancer or anything for that matters. But it's a totally different story when you're the one, the spouse, or, you're the caretaker. You're part of the life, but in reality, and I find that kind of interesting, because in reality, you could walk away from it all tomorrow. I know for many of you it's not even an issue. That's a whole different point. But in reality, it's not something happened directly to you, but it becomes a big part of your life.
Yeah.
And just to start out, just to talk a little about some positive things to begin with, how did you and Sean meet? I'm kind of curious.
So we, like I said, went to high school together, and we were in the choir, and he sat behind me and kicked my chair for a while, and then I would turn around and he would pretend that he hadn't done it. So we started dating in high school, but we actually found out later that back when he was in the womb and I was not yet even conceived, his parents, his whole family, extended family, had invited my parents over for Easter dinner because my parents were new to town. So they had met way back, and then, had sort of lost touch and didn't re-meet until 17, 18 years later when we were dating. So we go
that's
way
a funny
back.
Coincidence, actually, yeah.
Yes, we go way back to the beginning. Yeah.
Oh, nice. But when you, how long had you been together when you find out that he had Fanconi anemia?
Let's see. So we started dating when we were 16, 17. We got married at like 22-ish, and then he was diagnosed at 31. So we had already been married for quite a while. We had our daughter. We'd had our daughter for about a year when things sort of started getting strange medically. And then we spent about a year trying to figure out what his diagnosis was. And then, since then, it's just been kind of one thing after another. So, but we had sort of had like a, quote, typical married life for a little while, a number of years before this even came into our our life and our even we had never even heard of this disease. So
it's to be clear, I was about to say, did it come as a surprise? Of course it did. But what I meant to say was, how did you, the both of you, manage to deal with that diagnosis? Did you do the same mistake as many of us, where you go home and you Google it to begin with, or?
That's what everybody always does, right?
Yeah,
what
of course. And I always talk to, in one of the other episodes, the doctor would be like, "Don't Google it." Why are you even saying that?
Right,
we're going to do it.
That's going to make us Google it even more, right? Yeah, he actually found out about his diagnosis when he was in Honduras on a trip for work, and got an email from his doctor that had, I think, something attached with sort of like frequently asked questions kind of thing about Fanconi anemia. So he found out all on his own in Honduras and was reading it on this computer in the middle of the night. So that was sort of his introduction to it. And so then he came home, told me what happened, and then sort of started explaining to me, what this meant. Part of the thing I think that was different for us than other families with Fanconi is that he went almost immediately into having a bone marrow transplant. And so really we just sort of went down that path and didn't research that much about the rest of the disease, because it was just sort of like, what is the next step? The next step is to have a bone marrow transplant. Okay, that's what we'll do. And it wasn't until much later and until we started meeting other people in the community that we realized, like, whoa, there is a lot more to this than just this transplant thing. Like,
yeah, it's not like it's over when you get that.
Right.
It's like the beginning of a journey.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people were confused about that and were sort of congratulating us once he got through his transplant. And we're like, well, you made it and you did it and now it's cured. And it's sort of like, no, that's not how this works. And same thing with all the cancers he's had. He's had 7 major cancers, and each one that we get through, it's not like a different person who has cancer where they can say I'm in remission or whatever that might be. I mean, we just know another one's coming. Inevitably, that's just the way this disease works. And so it's sort of like, okay, good, I'm glad we took care of that cancer, but it's not like, whew, now you're good. That's not really the way this works. You're
never really going to relax afterwards.
Nope.
Because you always know that, Sean has been extremely under pressure. It just keeps coming, new stuff. And some of us are very lucky that we can go some years with just a little kind of normal life in between. But what struck me when I met you guys was that you're very positive-minded people. You have a good sense of humor, and smile a lot, and you seem to get the best out of the situation, even though it is it's bad. We can't argue about that. It's
and I think that we try to find a balance between positive but also realistic. Because I think sometimes people, positive to them means it's all going to be fine and it's going to be, just get through this thing and let's just be happy no matter what. And that's certainly not the way. We're very realistic about the reality that we're in. But at the same time, we find joy in little pieces of the day. I think, partly because we just really, enjoy each other's company. And so
that is important, of course.
It's a bonus. But I think that when you've gone through so many hard things, you start to really appreciate the little things that I think that we used to take for granted. And so we just got back. We just took our first out-of-town trip that we've taken in probably 6 months, that we finally felt like he was healthy enough. And we just went 90 miles. But that was a really big deal to go 90 miles to go visit some friends, because we really have not felt okay traveling that far away from the hospital in at least 6 months.
You can find a lot of good positive things about not being at the hospital and not being home. Just the normalization, the normal life. Just do something like visiting friends. It's huge all of a sudden.
Huge. It's huge. And so I think that things that other people might take for granted, that we really see, like we really love those moments and we cherish those moments. And so I think we're positive in that way. But not positive in sort of like a blissful ignorance in the way that I think, some people think of when they say, "Oh, you're so positive," right?
Yeah, but positive doesn't mean you have to be unrealistic. I mean,
Right.
I mean, you hear that all the time. But you're always happy, you're always smiling. When I talk to people at my job, sometimes I come in when some of the people we know have died. I have a hard time, but I just have to go to work. I mean, like everybody else, and pretend that everything is good.
Yeah.
But of course it's not when it's people you have met and people you care about. And from my point of view, I live in a different part of the world. I can't just go to the funeral. I can't just drop by, give them a hug, and the people left behind. So it's this thing that follows us every day, no matter if we are doing well or we are not, because it's so integrated in our life.
Mm-hmm. And that's such a good point that you bring up, that it's not just like, the people in the Fanconi Anemia community become our family, and so also through this have met so many other people with cancer because we spend so much time at the hospital and at the clinic. And so those people end up becoming our friends. And so it's not just the way it affects how is Sean doing today, but it's the way it affects like how are all the people in our community doing. And it feels very personal when someone else, passes away or isn't doing well, because partly because they're part of our family now, but also because I think it also is like, oh man, is he next? Or is this sort of a peek at what's going to happen to him? So it's really layered in that, right? That there's just a lot of layers. And I think that we deal with death and illness and disease on a regular basis much more than a typical 39-year-old,
Yeah, I agree, because it's, as I mentioned, it's always a part of our life. We can try to pretend to be normal. I don't know if that's the right way to explain it, but when we are doing well, we have to normalize things as much as possible. But as I mentioned, it's always with us. And also in your case, you went from the bone marrow transplantation, and shooting for digging a little, but how long after before he got his first cancer?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like the first couple of years after transplant, it was more dealing with all of the fallout from transplant. So he had a lot of graft versus host disease. He had his hip replaced. He had cataract surgery. So the after the bone marrow transplant, the first few years felt like it was dealing with all of the repercussions from the transplant. And so he had his hip replaced and cataract surgery and graft versus host disease. And so I think it was about 2 years after the transplant that the first cancer showed up. And then it's been almost one cancer a year since then. Yeah. And then on top of that, he's also had more than 100 skin cancers, and the type that need to be like really surgically removed, not just sort of like burned off, but like a pretty intense procedure to get those out. And so that's just a kind of a constant thing that's also being taken care of and lived through.
Yeah, it's a thing many people who's not part of this community might not. We have talked about getting cancers, but that part about skin cancer is quite normal, and this happens to us a lot. And so far, I've only had a lot of biopsies. I mean, I've almost got nothing. It's only like 5 in 2 years biopsies. Yeah. But each time they actually cut out, like, I don't know how much it is in inches, but a couple of centimeters. And I mean, it's just part of it. And whenever you go to these checkups, it's always this feeling of, I don't know how many, you're probably going to a lot of checkups because he's been hit so with so many things all the time. But usually, like, even if it's a month between or 3 months, it's like going up for an examination every time. You go in and it's like, either you are like, oh, good to go home and live your life like a normal, healthy person, or it's like, oh shit, you probably shouldn't make any plans for a long time.
Yep.
And it's difficult to explain to people who never tried it, I think. How did the two of you manage that, especially in the beginning?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think there's sort of like an emergency mode you go into in those moments. And so when you find out, okay, it is cancer and we're going to do a surgery and here's when the surgery is, and then all of these pieces sort of get lined up, around that surgery that I feel like we go into sort of like one foot in front of the other mode. It's like, okay, these are the scans that need to happen. This is the procedure that needs to happen. And sometimes like you don't have time to process in that moment because it's just like, okay, this is what has to happen next to get it done. And sometimes it's the afterwards then that you really are, when it all finally settles down and you've sort of lived through that then it's like, what just happened?
Then the fear kicks in and the anxiety.
Yeah. So he just finished 35 days of radiation and chemo, and that was a really dangerous thing for him to do. I mean, a lot of people in the Fanconi community have not survived radiation and chemo, and so we did not know if he would survive that. So seeing on the calendar, like, these are the 35 days that this is going to happen, and not knowing if at the end of that he would be alive was, I mean, he's had surgeries before where it's certainly like, okay, something could go wrong in surgery, but this was very much like on the calendar, seeing like, this is going to happen in these next 35 days. And are you going to be here at the end? Like, let's not make any plans for May because we don't know if you're going to be here in May.
And so people who do not know that, normally we are told we shouldn't get chemo or radiation because we have Fanconi anemia, especially if we have already been through a bone marrow transplantation. It's almost a no-go, but sometimes you need to take the chance because sometimes there's not much else to do.
Right. And actually we have found that it's better tolerated when you have had a transplant. So I think it's less recommended when you haven't. But yeah, it was sort of just like the back pocket option we had to use because there were no other options this time. But seeing that, having deaths like so clearly in front of us, the potential of that. So walking into it like seemingly healthy, right? I mean, there was cancer in the throat, but like relatively a healthy guy, like to know that like this thing you're about to do to him for the next 35 days that we're asking you to do and giving you permission to do might kill him. I mean, as a caregiver, that really messes with my head on the days when we like tell them to do things that I know are going to hurt, be dangerous, but we know we have to do it.
That's also what I'm thinking about because I've only had one cancer. I'm one of the lucky ones, so no doubt about that. But for me, it's okay for me to have a cancer. Of course, I can be afraid, but I need to handle it. I'm right there. I'm present. I just need to do what has to be done. But I know if something, even if my wife is just feeling not so well, I'm all over it. I'm like, are you sure you're okay? I mean, it feels a lot worse to me because I know what's happening inside my own body.
Yeah,
I know exactly what's going on.
Yeah,
and I feel I have some kind of control over it. I know it deep down I don't have any control over cancer. I know that, but it feels like I'm having some kind of control.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, how do you manage that for such a long time when you're the caregiver, when you're standing beside your husband, and that kind of loss of control?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I probably combat that in ways by trying to control all the things I can, right? As we humans do. And so trying to make sure all the appointments are lined up and the medications and the thing and the making sure nobody's sneezing on him. And, like all of those things, like the things I can control are the things that I sort of grasp onto. Fortunately, he is a pretty compliant patient, right? So he's
You
not
have to
the
say
kind
no.
that I don't need to, like I know some caregivers or spouses have to say like, why did you forget not take your medication? Whatever that is, like, that's not the case here. But I think that I do sort of hold on to those things. And I also, in that control piece, then feel like I have to be a watchdog for the medical community to make sure, do you know what you're doing here? Have you read the chart? Are you paying attention? Did you hear what he just said? So trying to control all of the sort of external pieces, because I can't control what's going on in his DNA. But I therefore try to focus on the things that I can control, because it sort of feels like sometimes that's all I can focus on, right? That's the only thing I can do anything about, is if the doctor's appointment was on time and if I made sure they read the chart and if he took the pills, because I can't do anything about what's going on in the body.
Yeah, because even if it's not you being in that situation, you still know so much about Fanconi anemia and now also cancer. So you actually bring that to the table when you talk to the doctors.
Yep.
I mean, for a lot of people, when I got cancer first time around, for me it was like this big thing. Everybody I've heard about cancer. People think, oh, I'm not going to survive this. But in reality, they've become very good at to handle a lot of cancers. I'm still here. Sean's still there. A lot of people are still there. Of course, it's never good. It's never fun. And we all know that it can end up very bad, especially when you keep getting the cancers.
Yep.
But that moment when you get the diagnosis, I don't know how it worked for Sean, but to me it was like this out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
I've just gotten a small thing removed from my tongue, and they had told me they took a biopsy. No, it's no cancer. But also, I want to get this removed, okay, just in case. And when I had my appointment, I really didn't have time. I'm a big child. I'm a gamer. There was a new game coming out. I've pre-ordered that. So I was like almost too busy to go there. So I was like, I just came in, and then 4 people walked in with me into the appointment. I was like, what is happening here? And then one of them was holding some brochures in her hand.
Oh, man.
And even before they spoke up, I could read the headline was like, A Life with Cancer. And I was like, oh, man, the whole world stood still and was like, oh, shit, what is going to happen now?
Yeah.
It really was this like out-of-body experience the first time around.
Yeah.
And I think it is for many people because we hear all the stories. I lost my own mom to cancer. And a lot of people have had that experience with family members and stuff.
Yeah. Right.
It's tough when you're family. You have a child, you have your parents, and you have the people around you. Were you hiding it to begin with, or?
Well, his first big one was on his tongue as well, and his mom actually had melanoma in her eye.
Okay.
So and she is in Indiana, which is about 10 hours drive from where we live, and the melanoma had come back, and so she needed to have her eye removed, if you can believe it. And so he had been following this spot on his tongue, and it kept coming back as not cancerous. And so he went to Indiana to be with his mom for the surgery. But while he was there, the spot, and he was documenting it, and the spot was just getting worse and worse. So at one point he flew back to Minnesota just to get a biopsy, and then he went back to Indiana for the surgery. So he was there in Indiana and got the call that said it's cancer. So I'm here in Minnesota. He's in Indiana. And his mom's about to go into this major surgery where her eye is going to be removed. And so he did not tell his parents for a few days because he said, she can't handle this right now. She's not. Should she? Not. Right. And so because he hadn't told her, then of course we didn't want to really tell other people either. And so I'm here by myself, sort of taking in this information without him and without being able to really tell anybody. And it just, at that point, we didn't really, because he wasn't in town, we didn't have the sort of steps for me, the planner, to sort of hold on to, right? Of like, okay,
not at that time, though. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we didn't have that. And so instead it was just this big open, well, what might this mean? And so you go to all the worst possible, like, what could be the worst thing that could happen? And what's the craziest thing they could do? Except that there is no way I would have ever in my whole entire life guessed what they ended up doing, which is that they ended up removing part of his tongue and then taking a chunk of his forearm and using his forearm to create a new part of his tongue. And then they took an artery from his arm and added that to his tongue to provide blood flow.
Wow.
I mean, you can't make this up, right? And so all the time I had spent thinking, like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I would have never thought, well, maybe they'll take his arm and turn it into a tongue, right? I would have never guessed that, right? And that's happened a couple of times. Another cancer he had bladder cancer. And I remember going into that appointment and thinking beforehand. I always try to think, which I guess is kind of, I don't know, pessimistics, but I always think about, like, what's the worst possible thing they could say to us when we go in here, right? And I was thinking, the worst possible thing they'll say is like a surgery and then maybe chemo or whatever. And when we went to that appointment, she said, we are going to remove his bladder.
Oh.
And I just thought, what are you even saying right now? Like, that's even a thing? Like, how is that a thing? And so time and again, I mean, we sort of have our initial reaction, but then it's just like the blow of once you hear what their plan is a whole extra set of adjustments to make of, like, okay, it's not just cancer, but they're going to remove a whole organ from your body.
Yeah.
Hey, now we need to start processing that, you know? Yeah.
And there's not really any rules how you process something like that, because it's just like, I usually say it's like living in a twilight zone when you're through these things, because it's so weird, because you have to be there, you have to be present, you have to take care of it, you have to try to stay, I would say, normal. I mean, you try to be in control, but in reality, all kind of emotion is just exploding inside you, and you have to deal with all that at the same time. I mean, when I got my tongue cancer, in the beginning they removed the part of it, just a small part, but it wasn't really enough, and then they were like, okay, we have to actually cut out the whole left part of the tongue, because they were fearing the cancer was sitting near the nerves, and they were afraid they would continue all the way down the throat, that we need to take that part out. But in my case, they chose to not do anything, but I didn't know that at the time, but if you just let the tongue be, sooner or later it will grow out again, like the tail on a lizard. And I was like, and the doctor was like, in the beginning I was like, but will I ever be able to speak again? It was like, just like the tail of a lizard, it will grow out. But if they actually sew it together or anything, then it can't. So they had to leave the wound open. So I had so many painkillers for about a month and a half until it started growing out. And it was the worst. And I have one thing I have to say to people who make these, what you call protein drinks. They need to come in more tastes, okay? After about a month and a half, getting those protein drinks with banana, strawberry, chocolate, and vanilla. And everybody who's go through mouth cancer or anything regarding in that area, do that. Couldn't some brilliant people invent different tastes?
Right, absolutely. I think that people don't think of those things as a chronic. I think they think like, oh, as a side, like I'm running out the door and I'm running late, I'll grab one of these things. So, but I don't think they think of people like you or like Sean, who there for a while, that's all they can have, right? That's all they can drink. And they don't think about it in the chronic illness sort of community. And that this is like a long-term thing for a lot of people and not just like a one-off kind of casual, like I just need it for a couple of days. Like you needed it for 6 weeks, you know?
But also kind of ironic, because I had a bigger problem with those tastes than I had with the cancer. In reality, no, of course, I was very emotional about that. But that was something I could be angry about, because I couldn't really... Cancer don't give a flying beep about my emotions, I mean... But it was something I could actually go out and be like, oh, damn, I want something different. I mean, again, you try to control small things. Yes.
That's such a good point, that you can't get mad at your genes. You can't get mad at cancer. You can't, you know, but you can get mad at the makers of those shakes. You know, you can get mad that there aren't more flavors of shakes. And I mean, that makes so much sense, right? That we just, like we try to, again, like, cling on to something. Because people say that a lot. Are you mad? Do you get mad? I go, what am I mad at?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like anger doesn't feel productive in any way. I mean,
not really. No.
You know, like he's not choosing this. I'm not mad at him. You know, I'm not mad at God. I don't, you know, I don't feel like, and I mean, I think a lot of people do feel anger, and there's a lot of reasons to be angry. I just haven't found like a place that feels helpful to aim that anger, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
But I think you're right then. For me, it's things like if I see a medical professional who's not doing their job well or something, like that's when I get angry, right? Because it's like, this is hard enough already. You should be at least good at what you're doing here, right? That's where I tend to, you know.
Yeah. I think it's the same for you guys. I mean, when you're in that kind of situation, you try to be nice to the doctors and especially the nurses. And I am like 90% of the time. But they're right in front of me, and when I'm frustrated, I should know better. Usually I do, but they're easy targets when you're so frustrated. I don't know what to do, and you don't know what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
So those small things that you mentioned, somebody not doing their job or forgetting something, you just reach onto that to have something, because you're so emotional all the time.
Right. Well, and in the moment, those don't feel like small things. You know, somebody forgetting your pain pills, or somebody like dropping something sterile on the floor, or, you know, whatever that is, like it just feels like everything feels like life and death. And it's like you dropping that sterile thing on the floor and wanting to put that in him. No, like I will not let you be the end of him. You know, like I will not let that happen. And he already has enough strikes against him that I'm not going to let, you know, you having a bad day be the thing that causes something to go wrong here, you know? Yeah.
So if I can make a small jump into, I know what your life is like right now, going through a lot. I'm also following you on, you have this place, Negative Space, it's called.
Yep, it is.
People, you will get the link afterwards, because you really should have a look at that.
Thank you.
So I can see where you're at right now, but given all things we have talked about here, how do you handle the thought and the talk about death? Is it something you talk about every now and then, or is it like it's something you try to avoid, or how do you handle that kind of thoughts, especially as a caregiver?
Yeah. I think that I think it's always in my mind. I won't speak for Sean, but I'll say for myself, it's always there. I always think, you know, when we think about things like our daughter graduating from high school, or, you know, getting married, like things far off in the future. I think I always have a little bit of an asterisk in the back of my mind of like, who knows what, if he'll be here at that time. Like, we just do not know. And things tend to happen so quickly with him as well that it's not like there's never like writing on the wall kind of thing. Right. And so it doesn't feel unrealistic to think like, oh, even this date that's coming up not that far off, like maybe he wouldn't be there. Right. And so I think that I'm always sort of have that in the back of my mind, which is a strange way to live. I think people our age, I'm 39 and he's 40, don't typically think like that. And they are just assuming that the future is pretty steady for them. And I think that that's not something that we take for granted. I think that especially with what we just went through with this radiation and chemo, we talked about it more than we typically do. Just even in, we had to make the decision, does he even do this dangerous treatment? Knowing that it might kill him, but knowing that if he didn't do it, then the cancer would grow and would kill him. Yeah. And so we had to have some really hard conversations about like, which path do we go down, knowing that either could end badly. And so we talked just a lot about like, what's that going to look like? And what are we choosing here? And how do we feel about that? And what are these next months going to bring? And all of that, that we did talk about more because of this latest thing. Yeah. But I think that and there are lots of sort of traumatic things that have happened to him that sometimes leave me, wondering, like, is this the thing? I think that's always kind of, because the thing with Fanconi anemia is that people die from very different things. It's not sort of like this is the way it will end for everyone, which can feel hard because we don't exactly know what will happen. We just, know that this life expectancy isn't long. And so it's hard to know, like, is it like getting a fever and getting pneumonia and ending up in the hospital? Like, is that going to be the thing? Is it going to be a cancer? Is it, like, what is it? And so that just sort of makes everything feel dangerous, which is a scary way to live, when everything feels like perilous and everything could be the thing. This person sneezing on him right now could be the thing that, like, turns into this, which turns into that, which,
I'm laughing. It's not really funny, but it's just what we have to deal with. That constant thought of, is this the one? If I feel something in my body, and I had, like, lipoma, I think it's called. Ooh.
Lymphoma?
Yeah, I had some lipoma, isn't it called that?
There's something called lymphoma, but
it's like a big chunk I had on my back here on my side. Last year, it wasn't really anything, but I went to the hospital and they were like, "Oh, it's nothing dangerous, not cancer or anything." And should we just let it stay there? I was like, excuse me? You're the same hospital who took the test of my tongue and told me it wasn't cancer?
Right.
It was the exact same hospital. I mean, and I told you, I have a feeling it might be cancer, so I want to get it removed. And you say, you don't need that. And we had a discussion about it. You finally took it out and it was cancer. Now you're telling me this is not cancer. And we should just let it. No, we ain't going. No way. No way, Neil. I'm going to walk around with this. I mean, I would be paranoid all the time.
Right. Well, and think about the level of advocacy you have to have for yourself, and that I feel like I have for Sean and he has for himself. And just, we know so much, and we know in a lot of ways more than most of our doctors do about this disease. So I feel like we have to advocate, and that adds this extra level of stress. Like, I think that some people would go to the hospital, the doctor would say, "Oh, it's fine, just leave it." And they'd be like, "Phew, great, off I go, I'm going to live my life." But for us, I think in this community, we realize, like, an extra burden we have is to convince our doctors to take this seriously and to say, no, not okay. You got to take it off. You got to take it off. You got to biopsy it. And I think that's just this extra burden that we all carry is that piece, and the piece of there just aren't clear protocols, right? And so, like, what with Sean just went through, it's not as if, like, some of the typical cancers that people in the world get, where it's like, okay, you have this, well, then these are the things you're going to do. They are figuring it out as they go, and they just said, for him, they were like, this is a data-free zone. I mean, and that's not what you want to hear when they're making plans.
Not really.
About your life. Is this a data-free zone? And so I think that's just this extra burden that we carry, right? Is having to advocate, having to research, having to, like, just hope that it's going to work because there isn't any data to prove that it will. And, that's it's an extra layer for sure.
Do you live in a place where there's some local Fanconi anemia experts at all?
Fortunately, we do, which we didn't move here for that. That happened this is where we lived. And then we realized that John Wagner, who is one of the
he's
leading experts, is here. Hold on one second. Maya, please be quiet. So one of the leading experts is here, but he's a pediatrician. And so it can be challenging because obviously Sean is an adult. And so that he's not technically our doctor, and just some of the things, even though we do have him here, they're in areas that even he hasn't figured out, right? He's figured out bone marrow transplants, but they're still trying to figure out what to do with people who get head and neck cancers. And so even though he's right here, doesn't always mean that he has the answers, because nobody really has the answers yet.
Well, but it must still be nice. I mean,
Oh, very nice. Yes.
I mean, it's a small country in Denmark. We're only 5.5 million, so we do not have many experts. One of them has not been working with Fanconi Anemia. He was the one who actually did my bone marrow transplantation back in the days. And he's in the Fanconi Anemia research, found the book about doctors from all over the world. But he's not really working with this field anymore. And we have one other, and he will go in pension next year. So we've taught in our community where we are 18 people now with Fanconi Anemia, and we have been like, shit. I mean, these were the only two experts.
Yeah, right.
And we have an upcoming doctor, but I mean, we would very much like to have an expert, somebody with actually experience. So we're wondering a lot about what will happen.
Yeah.
When that time comes. I mean, it's less than a year from now. So we've been talking a lot about that. But you do have you have Dr. Wagner, and you have some very talented doctors in the U.S.
We do. You're right.
When it comes to Fanconi Anemia.
Yeah, that's a good reminder to me. I think I forget how spoiled we are that we are right here with all these good doctors at our fingertips. And I think you're right that it's hard when you feel like, who are the experts, and are the people making decisions about my care? Do they know all the facts? You know, are they well researched? Like, are they going to do this the right way? And that's hard when you're kind of second guessing that. So I can imagine for you with losing that expert, that's got to be tough.
We have a little, for hopefully some positivity, because even though there's the European Union, the countries are still very independent, and they don't really, the hospital, they have nothing to do with each other. You only work like the hospitals in Denmark work together, hospitals in Germany. But Dr. Breininger, who's been a lot of, she's trying to set up a program where the hospital where she's now head of, that they would try to, in the first, get all the patients from all the regions of Germany, but they will also try, hopefully open up for people in other European countries. But it's not normal at all. So they have a lot of things to go through before it can actually be done, because if I'm going to, we have free healthcare in all the European countries. So, but normally the money follows me as a patient. I can choose if I want to go to this town or that town to the hospital, and the money will follow me. But it won't follow me if I go to a different country in Europe. So they will have to figure out how to work that out. But I know there's been a lot of talk about that in the European community, because we could really use a center like you have some in the US, and it's so important. They have in Brazil. I mean, they have in Japan. But it's so important to have these centers where they know what they're actually doing.
Yes.
I mean,
it's
all live.
Yes, absolutely. So I think it's two different things, right? Part of it is that there are some people who have figured some things out. And so it's great when we can, as patients, can get access to those people. And I think the other piece is that there's a lot they haven't figured out.
Oh, yeah.
And so what do we do in those moments when they don't know, right? And so, like in our situation, Dr. Wagner was just emailing all the experts, and they were sort of having an email conversation to try to say, like, what should we do with Sean? And so that just, as a caregiver, then I just am sometimes thinking, like, should I be bugging them more? Should I be making sure that they all even read that email and that they got, you know what I mean? Because again, it's like you said, it's their lives. And so, if we, just to make sure that we are getting all the best information and the best advice based on what's even out there at this point, which isn't enough, right? They're still learning more all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And also it feels weird we have to believe that they know what they're doing. I mean, we have to trust them.
Yeah.
But when we do, we trust them with our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes for everybody with a serious illness. I mean, a lot of us, we are born with that. You have to believe in authorities. But we also have to relearn that part, because a lot of doctors and nurses do not know anything about this. And even if they do, are they making the right decisions?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you're putting everything in their hands.
Yeah. I mean, we felt a bit like Sean was a guinea pig in this last radiation chemo thing, because they were just sort of like, well, we're going to try it and we'll see how it goes. And we'll learn from it. You know, and it's like, you don't really want your person to be a guinea pig. You want them to be, you know, you want there to be strong data that says, here's how this is going to go. And fortunately, like, Sean's old enough that by the time he had his bone marrow transplant, that's what happened. They said, we figured it out. Took us a bunch of years, but now we figured it out. Here's the plan. It's like a 90% success rate. Here you go. Right. But now he's like one of the cutting edge people for what just happened with radiation and chemo, because that's sort of the next thing they have to figure out. And they haven't yet. And it felt pretty terrible to be jumping into this enormous thing with no data and feeling a little bit like a guinea pig, like the experiment's going to happen on him.
I think that's just, we are guinea pigs no matter what, how you look upon it. I mean, we've talked about it in a few other episodes with some of the patients that for a lot of us, we are first timers. I mean, there used to not be any kind of checkups for adults because there wasn't any adults. People didn't live that long. So, you know, they have to reinvent the wheel almost every single year because they find out something new and we grow older. But then again, we are guinea pigs. And it feels like shit sometimes. But on the other hand, I mean, when I got the part of my tongue removed, you know, Ralph from Germany, he flew to here to get that piece. Wow. To bring it to a laboratory in Holland. They also work with Fanconi Anemia there. Okay. But it's so weird. And afterwards, they sent me pictures in my mail like, oh, we got the piece of your tongue. Thank you so much. Now we're trying to see if we can grow cancer in it. It's like, this is weird. So it's weird. Fuck. I mean, pardon my language, but we are guinea pigs no matter if we like it or not.
Right. And I think Sean is like such an incredible human, if I may say so. But
you may.
Okay, thank you. But he's so good about like, well, if it doesn't go well, they'll learn something, and then the next group of people will learn from that. And I'm like, as the wife over here, I'm a little bit more like, oh no, I would actually like you to stay. So I would like it to go well for you, right? But he, you know, he's had a number of huge surgeries, and they always beforehand say, you don't have to do this. You know, you can choose to not like have part of your arm put onto your tongue. You can choose to not have your bladder removed. And he always says, nope, I'm as long as I can keep being in community with people, and as long as I can keep doing something that might help the community. And I think too, I don't know if you feel this, but you guys are sort of the patriarchs of this group in a way, right? Like you're some of the oldest people. And I know that a lot of the parents of young kids who have FA are watching. You know, they're really keeping an eye to see like what your lives look like, to see sort of like what the future might be for their kids. And I think Sean thinks that's pretty cool. I think sometimes I feel like that's kind of a lot of pressure. But you know, the parents reach out and say like, your story is giving us hope. We're so glad to see what's happening and how well it's going, you know, that kind of thing. But then they also ask a lot of questions because I think they're trying to figure out like what's in store for their kids. But who knows? I mean, 30 years from now, it could be a whole different ball game for their kids.
It could, but also every case is so individual. Yes. I mean, not two cases are the same, and that is also part of the problem. That we can't always compare to each other. Like, Sean got the cancer, Sean got the tongue cancer, I got the tongue cancer, but what happened from there was totally different. So I mean, you can't really compare. But I know that, and I know Sean feel the same way. I know that the same goes for a lot of other people I've been talking to. Also, like Eric, I talked to in an earlier episode. Like, we know that we are like the dinosaurs. I mean, we're like 200 years old in FA years because we're over 40. Yeah. And so I know when I go through stuff, I want them to take a lot of tests and maybe even some extra tests because it's not good to say, but I know I'm screwed anyway. So I mean, I know that. I mean, I got my bone marrow transplantation made the old way. They stopped doing that because people didn't survive. I'm like this lone soldier who's still walking, who got made that way, because nobody else with FA, as far as I know, actually still alive. And then a guy called Matt from Orlando, he was the first guinea pig, let's call it that, with the new way of doing the bone marrow transplantation, and he's also still there. I mean, so we are actually a bigger group of people in the beginning of the 40s, and I'm happy about that. I follow up on what is happening to Sean, what's happening to all of them, because it matters to me, but and also because even though I shouldn't compare, I keep comparing.
Of course, that's human. You know, and I think that we see that even, it makes me think back to when he had his transplant, there would be like caregiver support session kind of things that I would go to. But I stopped going because, like, if a caregiver said, well, my husband's doing great, he's going home tomorrow, that would make me be like, well, forget you. Like, I don't want to hear your nice story because my husband's not doing well, you know? And then if a different person said, my husband's about to, like, go home and be on hospice, then that was terrifying to me, you know? And so sometimes it's hard when you're in, like, similar situations, even though you said, like, everybody's case and with FA is so different, but it's hard because you can't help but compare.
Of course not.
You cannot help it. And sometimes seeing the really hard stories, like, it, you know, I think that sometimes it makes you be like, well, at least I'm doing better than that. But then it also makes you feel like, but that could be me next year. I don't know. Right. It's hard. It's hard. And then, you know, add the fact that now we're all friends with each other too. I mean, that's an extra piece of that, because it's not just a random person in the support group. It's like people that we have met, like, and formed close bonds with.
It's a gift to get to know other people in the same situation. I mean, also my wife, she loves that we are Egil, another patient here from Denmark. We actually meet with them every now and then. And for my wife to be able to talk to Egil's wife. Yes. I mean, they're both caretakers like you, and it's important because they kind of know each other's situation. But we have also talked about, in our little group here in Denmark, we haven't lost anybody for all the years we have known each other. We've only had the group for like 4 or 5 years. But it's going to hurt so much that day.
Oh, absolutely.
And when I say that, I have to also mention that we just found a new woman, like a couple of months ago, also with Fanconi Anemia. But her brother actually passed away this November, and he also had Fanconi Anemia. So it's not like everybody's surviving here. We just didn't know him at that time. But I mean, we are a tightly knit community, both here and worldwide.
Yes,
it makes it's a gift, because I don't know what I would have done without meeting some of you guys, because it has meant so much. I've learned so much.
Yes.
And suddenly have people look up. So, I mean, I've seen 2 people over 50. To me, that's like, wow, it could happen. I know we're talking theories, but it could happen. And it's important for me.
Yes.
To have something to look forward to, me, like, maybe if I play my cards right, I can get to that point. I mean, that would be a dream.
Just like you're giving hope to the parents of those kids.
Exactly.
You see those 50-year-olds is like, oh, look at that. You know, like, they're giving you hope too. Yeah.
And everybody needs hope.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we had been really close friends with Amy Frohnmeyer and Chris Bird, both, and we lost both within a few months of each other. And we were like daily talking to both of them, close friends. And at Chris's funeral, I met Matt for the first time. And because I recognized him, I said, I think that are you in the FA community? And he said, yes, we should be friends. And in that moment, my reaction was like, I cannot be friends with more people with FA right now. Like, it hurts too much to bring on a new friend, knowing that I could lose them. You know, and of course, since then we've become friends. But in that moment, you know, at that funeral, it was just like, this is painful. It is painful to bring on new friendships knowing that they could end tragically. Right. And yet they're some of our most important friendships. And so, I mean, I wouldn't let go of any of them.
A lot of us connect on a deeper level, both
For
us
sure.
with
Absolutely.
Fanconi Anemia, but also the caretakers, the spouses,
Yep.
the people around
Yep.
us, because we have so much in common. So it's
Mhm.
difficult to push people away and say,
Right.
but at the same time, when we go to these meetings, we have every year we have an adult meeting. There's also like a camp for children and families. But when you go each year, or the years where you can make it, you know not everybody's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I both love going there and
Yes.
also
Yes.
kind of not fearing it, but
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I have chills just like thinking about that because it's been really hard for us the last couple of years, especially the year right after we had lost Chris and Amy.
oh yeah,
Because also you just think like last year I was in this session and I was sitting with them. Now they're part of the PowerPoint presentation. Now they're part of the statistics on the slide, right? And I just like cried through that whole meeting because it was just like, this is too much. Like, this is too much. And I think you're right. Like every year when you show up and it's sort of like, okay, who's not that was here just a year ago? And Sean has said that the three of the people that we had gotten closest with were Chris and Amy, and then also Joel Walker, who, you know, all three of them died in a really small amount of time. And Sean said that at that last meeting where we all were, he said, you know, if anybody had looked around at the four of them and said, like, who will be here a year from now? He said nobody would have guessed it would have been Sean. He said nobody would have put their money on Sean. And yet a year later, he was the one still there. And, you know, I think that, you know, might hold a burden as well. Sort of like, why do I still get to be here and they don't? And, you know.
I think some of us who's older have this survivor's guilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm happy to be alive. I mean,
Yes.
I just got a son about 7 months ago. I'm so happy. It's like I never thought it would happen. And it's the best thing in the world. And it takes my mind a lot away from a lot of the bullshit just to look him in the eyes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good things regarding that. But at the same time, when I see the younger ones die, when we lose, like I didn't know Amy and Chris, only met them like once, but still up to this day, because I was at Camp Sunshine, just to again try to be an inspiration for the parents to see that maybe your kids can actually grow older than you thought they would. And then they sent this small video. I don't know if you've seen that music video, Bad Blood, that Amy did with her husband, and they showed us that one on the big screen, and we were smiling and laughing. So when the news came out she didn't make it, to this day I cannot hear this song.
That I just heard that song this weekend, and I just couldn't. You're exactly right, because it was the same thing. I was like, and at first I couldn't figure out, like, why am I having such a reaction to this song? And then I realized, oh, this is Amy's song. This is the song from Amy's video.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right.
So, and also I did talk a lot to, again, I only met Joe once, but we started communicating a lot because he's a terrific guy. I mean, yeah, I just loved his sense of humor and a lot of the way he thought about everything. It was like, I really admire that and appreciated the talks.
Yes.
And even though I have my son now, as to go back to that, I still have this, why am I still here? It's not fair. I mean, I went for almost 20 years after the BMT without any complication. I got one cancer, and it's almost 5 years ago. I'm happy that I get to keep a job and be with a wife that I love with all my heart. I'm happy I've become a parent. But then I turn around and see people who were at the same state as me. We also lost Colleen not so long ago, and she was also among those who have gone a lot of years after bone marrow transplantation.
Yeah,
and we are not many. So it feels so unfair. I've talked to some of the others about it too. This really survivor's guilt, because
Mm.
I mean, why am I still here when kids are dying?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And going through one thing after the other. I, at the same time, I appreciate it,
Yeah.
but sometimes I want to cry my heart out because
Yeah.
it's so freaking unfair.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole thing is unfair, right? I mean, none of these young people should be dying, right? The whole thing is unfair. And so I think, I hear you, and I would hate for you to spend like one moment of time that you could be like loving on that baby boy, thinking like, well, I shouldn't be here, because you are. And we don't know why you are and others aren't, but you are. And that's that. So take it. Take it and run and just.
Don't get me wrong. I appreciate it so much. It's just those small moments, and I think a lot of us have them from time to time. But I mean, also for you, Scott, even though I know Sean keeps getting these cancer, it's been terrible what you've been through. But at the same time, I'm like, man, what a fighter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
and he actually, we talk a lot about like, we don't love like those terms of like fighting and battle, and I'm fighting a battle of cancer. You know what I mean? But I haven't found a good replacement, right? I think that a reason he doesn't love that is it feels like, what if he loses? Right? People say he lost his battle with cancer, and that makes it sort of seem like it's your fault, right? And it's not.
And so when it's like something you went into willingly when you talk about a battle, and it really ain't, No.
Right, exactly. And so he just, he just does his thing, and he's just like one foot in front of the other, I think, with both of it. Because people ask us this all the time. How do you do it? How do you do it? What's your secret? And it's like, well, there's no secret. We just keep going because there isn't really an option, and so we just one foot in front of the other, one doctor's appointment after the other, and look for the little moments of joy in the middle of it. And
I mean, what do people expect when there's something like that?
I don't know. I think that other people who are caregivers or other people who have serious illnesses have asked that. It's sort of like, oh, this feels really hard for me. How do you do it? And I think they're hoping I'm going to have some magical answer that might help them. I think people not in the situation are just baffled because it's so different from the life that they live, that they're just baffled that we can continue to do it. And I've heard too that I think sometimes when people see others who are having hard times, they are scared that it could happen to them. Right. And so I wonder if they're sort of hoping that they might hear something that's like, oh, well, that's not me. That couldn't happen to me. It's different, But I mean, there is no secret answer. And like you said at the beginning, like technically as a caregiver, as the wife, I could just be like, I'm out. Right. But that is just not even, I mean, like I said, I kind of really like this guy. He's kind of amazing.
I hope so.
He's kind of the best. Right. And so
exactly.
That's just never even like, that's something that crosses my mind. It's just more like, this is the thing that we're in together. And it's complicated and it's hard. And that's what I really try to, you mentioned I do this writing at a place called The Negative Space. And that's really what that's about. And people hear that and they think it means negativity, but really it's about, like, in the art world, negative space is sort of what's in the background, what's making up part of the picture, but not the thing that people focus on. And so, like, in my writing, I'm really just trying to talk about the fact that it is hard, and to sort of shine light on like the behind the scenes of how hard this stuff is. Because I think that, especially as caregivers, I think we sometimes think we can't complain because we're healthy. So why do we have a right to complain?
Oh, you have all the right to complain.
I think we have all the right to complain. Exactly. And so that's what I'm really just trying to do, is sort of say, like, sort of show the behind the scenes of what our life is like, and show things like, this is him in the hospital, and this is us at like our 8th doctor's appointment, and this is us like really tired, and this is us sad. And because I think people just show the shiny stuff.
It's because it's the easiest part. I mean, it has become even more normal now. It was also like that before, of course, but even with social media, it's become even worse. I mean, we want to often show the
Yeah.
The
shiny
nice picture. You wanna show people a fairy tale.
Yep.
I mean, that is in reality what is going on most of the time. A lot of us don't show or share. I mean, I can put up a picture of my son or my dog on Facebook or something else like that. But I can't remember I've ever been putting up a picture where I was sitting at home crying, shaking, because I was fearing for what is going to happen to me.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of like not what I would put on Facebook. But that's also a part of me.
Yeah.
So I get the idea about the negative space, because we often seems to not hide these things, but it makes us uncomfortable because we are vulnerable when we show that side of ourselves.
And I think that when people say, like, how do you do it? That's what I'm trying to show them, is like, how do we do it is not just us, like, out there in the world. Like, you know, like if you see us at a dinner party or whatever, and you're like, oh, they look so good and they're so happy, like, you know, that's just such a small sliver of it, right? And so I'm trying to show that, like, how we do it is all of it. It's not just the, like, 10 minutes you happen to run into us at the grocery store. It's like all the behind the scenes stuff that's happening. That is what makes this work, and not just the shiny part, because sometimes there are very few shiny parts. And that's okay too, because most people are having very few shiny parts, right? And so I think that the more we can sort of normalize the fact that life is hard and it's okay to talk about that, the more
because it's not just us. It's not just because we have Fanconi Anemia. I'm interested in someone else that, I mean, you might grow up in a place where people are very poor, or where you don't you have to fight to even get fed every day. There can be so many things in your life. You can grow up in a bad family where your parents are drinking or beat you up. I mean, there's so many cases of people having a hard life. It's not just us. And that's also why I want to try to, that's also what I want to talk about in this podcast. Because even though we have to deal with maybe some, I would call it different stuff than others. I know it's a terminal disease. I don't kid myself. I'm not walking around being like, I just got a chronic disorder that might be bad for me. I know what it's about. Until they can show me 10 people who died of old age, I know what the game is about. I mean, come on. But even though you have some things to fight within your life, no matter what it is, there's still positivity. I mean, the two of you are still together.
Oh,
that's
absolutely
positive.
Yes.
You have a daughter. You have some good things in your life.
Oh, for sure. And I think, like, sort of to wrap around to what we talked about earlier, like, I think that's positivity, right? We're positive and, like, grateful for every one of those pieces, and we're realistic, right? And so I think to sort of separate the two a bit and know that, like, positive doesn't mean like blindfolded, right? To the reality of what's actually happening. Like, you can be grateful and happy and still know that, like, this might not end well, but I'm still in a good mood today, and I'm still really happy that I'm here and that I have this beautiful family, and, you know, like, we can have both of those things, you know?
So that leads me to what makes you happy. Not just you as a couple, but you.
Yeah.
As a character, what makes you happy? What lights up your day?
Yeah, I love that question. I mean, I have tried to find little things to sort of, because it's not like in our crazy life, I can just, like, go off to a spa for a week, right? Like, none of that is realistic. And so I have little things in my day that I do. Like, I have a lot of coffee mugs that have lots of different, like, sayings and designs and things like that. And in the morning, I love my coffee, and I choose my mug really carefully for the day ahead. Cool. And so it sort of becomes like my mantra for the day, whatever the mug was, I sort of choose it for what's ever about to happen. Same thing. A lot of people have sent me, like, funny socks. And so sometimes, depending on the day, I choose socks that are sort of, like, inspirational or snarky or whatever. So just little tiny things that I can do like that. I love, and I think I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly since I'm speaking to a Dane, but, like, is it Huga? Am I saying that right?
What?
Huga?
No, yeah, Huga, yeah.
Yes. So, I love all the coziness, right? And so I have also just tried to make my home office and our house just, like, the sort of the coziest, so that when we are here, we feel just really comfortable. And like, it's sort of like we can have a whole long day of doctor's appointments, but I'm going to come home and we have these 2 cozy cats, and I have my coffee in my cozy mug, and I got blankets everywhere and slippers, and just to sort of like a retreat here at home. And so it's those little things in the day, those pieces that sort of like comfort me and bring me joy in between doctor's appointments and work meetings and driving our daughter and all those things. I've just found that to build them in.
That's life quality right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. Just curl up on the couch and watching something stupid. It doesn't matter what it is. Just being there, as you mentioned, with a cup of coffee. And just we don't have cats, we have a dog, the dog by my side. And I love that. I mean,
exactly. And I always I get in bed early. I have a giant stack of books by my bed, and I just lie in bed and read for an hour at night with the cat. And, it's those things that regardless of how chaotic and crazy the day was, I know I'm going to have the coffee in a special mug in the morning. I know at the end of the day, I'm going to have the book and the cat in the bed. You know what I mean? It's like those things that I can count on that sort of keep my day,
Yeah, the small thing where the last thing I do before I go to bed each night, that is walking with the dog, walk the dog.
Yeah, yeah.
And those just 10 to 15 minutes outside.
Yeah.
I call it that is the him and I time at the day. I mean, it was and my neighbors probably think I'm crazy because all the way when I'm walking him, I'm talking to him.
Oh, yeah.
I say, any good smells today? But
right.
So stupid.
Well, I think it's those little rituals too, right? Again,
exactly. Small rituals that makes you feel good.
Yeah, there's so much that we can't count on or predict in our lives, right? Especially in the lives that you and I are living, and knowing for you that at the end of the day, you and your dog are going to take that 10-minute walk. That,
no matter what happens.
Yeah.
That's still there.
Mean, that makes a big difference.
It does.
Again, I don't know. I think control maybe sounds like too harsh of a word. But again, it's like something we can control or something we can hold on to in the midst of the uncertainty, right?
So I've been asking some of the patients I've been talking to about what advice they would give to people around them. Caretakers and, people in their life, friends and family, about how they would like to be approached regarding their disease. Because I thought that was people often find it difficult to talk to us.
Yeah.
But I want to turn it around.
Yeah.
Because I won't say we can be annoying. I would never admit to that. But as a caregiver, what advice could you give to the patients?
Oh, interesting.
I mean, you have a totally different view on this.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think, and every patient, every situation is so different. So I guess I'll just think about Sean. What advice would I give to him? I don't know. That is such a good question. He's pretty great. Because I was going to say, he does do a lot of these things. And I know that people we have some friends who the husband has cystic fibrosis, but he has known that since he was a child. And so he really takes a lead in his care, and his wife really doesn't, she goes to appointments when she can and whatever. And I don't know if it's because of the age or if it's just my personality or whatever it is, but I feel like I'm sort of the manager of this illness. I make the appointments and I refill the prescriptions and I do all that. And I do that, I think, also because I just want to sort of take any burden I can from him. I don't want him to have to wrestle with the insurance company. I don't want him to have to deal with the bureaucracy of things. And so I try to take all that off his plate. So I think we have sort of a good balance there, but I don't know what advice I would give him. I'm sorry that I don't have a good answer.
It's okay. It's okay. I didn't really plan this a lot. It was it was just I thought that maybe there was something that, because as I mentioned, you have a different point of view because you are the caretaker.
Right. Can I say what I would say to other caregivers?
Yeah, of course.
So I think that I would say, and again, what I'm trying to do through Negative Space is to give caregivers permission, and I guess this would go for patients as well, is to say that it's hard, to admit that it's hard, and just to be really honest about what that feels like, and to not ever feel like they don't count, right? Because we as caregivers, I feel like, are in the negative space. We're in the background of this picture. You know, when people look at us, they see Sean, he's the patient, and I'm just sort of hovering in the background, right? And so I'm sort of trying to make it, and I think other caregivers to say like, hey, I'm here too, and this really affects me too, and here's how, and to not feel like you can't talk about that because you're not the sick one, right? So I think that's something I would hope that other caregivers could sort of feel like they could take on too, is to be like, hey, this is hard. It's hard for me too, even though I'm healthy. It's hard.
But just to say it, okay? We know you're there. You're like our guardian angels.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
No, but really, because as mentioned, we already talked about a few times. You could walk away, but
Right.
I mean, there's nothing we can do. We are in this because we have it.
Yes.
You don't.
Right.
And still you choose to be by the side of the one you love. And you spend the time. I mean, when I look upon my wife, when I look upon Iggy's wife, when I hear your guys' story, when I meet you, I mean, to me it's like, wow, you're not in the background at all.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I mean, not even close. I mean, what would we do without you? No, but it's not to say that you can't be happy without having a wife or a husband or anything. It has nothing to do with that. But it just makes things easier. When you're having a shitty time, when you're afraid you ain't gonna make it, when you have all these thoughts, it's unbelievable to have somebody by your side who can give you that special hug at the right time.
Absolutely.
And not tell you everything's going to be all right, because maybe it don't, but just to feel that you're not alone in this.
Yes. And I think that patients get it. I think, I mean, my daughter says all the time, she's like, oh, I think Dad might not be alive if you weren't around, Mom. Like, I think that you've saved his life a lot of times. And so I think it's not so much the patients that don't see the caregivers. I think it's maybe like the community or the family or
maybe you're right.
You know, the doctors, you know, like might not listen to the caregiver. And so I think it's everybody else sort of seeing that, like, this illness doesn't just impact the person who's sick, but like all the people in the space around them as well.
So just to make it very clear, both to you, all the wives, but also the parents of children and grown-ups with Fanconi and cancer, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Cancer, we would never be able to repay what you have done to us. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
It really matters.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, that appreciation matters too. And I think that's why I'm sort of trying to get out the importance of caregivers, right? Because we can sometimes be the unsung heroes behind the scenes, right? And so, I thank you for that appreciation. That means a lot.
And I know I'm not alone in this at all.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, and I just love when we actually at some meetings and you guys start talking and having fun together. I mean, it's like, that it's just nice to see you happy. That's one thing, and laughing and stuff. Yeah. But also for me, it gives me some kind of comfort that I know that when we pass us, or when we die from this, you still have a community of people. Yeah. You might not want to spend all your time with these people because maybe it hurts so much to talk about, but you have someone. You have someone out there who know how it is to go through something like this. And I mean, I'm still make it easier.
For sure. I'm still very good friends with Amy's husband, with Chris's partner, with Joel's dad. You know, those are people that are like in my life, you know, and that we became so close through that we're still like in contact and see them and our friends, and that's not going anywhere. So yeah, that's a huge part of this too.
Well, here by the end, I want one last question, and
Okay.
it's just not just like the one before, but what advice would you give to other people who end up in a situation like this?
Other patients, other caregivers, or just in general, other people?
In general, Carlos, and both actually, because I mean, when you got into this, it was just you started with the PMC, then it was one long roller coaster.
Right.
It has been,
Yep.
but you're still here. You still have those moments where you can still appreciate things around you here.
Yeah.
But for people who are newly diagnosed,
Right. Yeah. Oh, I have so much advice.
fire away.
I'll try to narrow it down.
Okay.
But I think one big thing, like a basic mantra, is just sort of like one foot in front of the other. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know what's going to happen 6 steps down the road. Just like do the next thing. Do the next appointment. Do the next surgery. Do the next whatever it is. Just keep doing the next thing. And don't get too overwhelmed by sort of like the enormity of this, but just like little step, and that'll just keep you going. I think that's a big one. I think I've talked a lot, like I said, I talk a lot about people admitting like what this really feels like and not feeling like they need to sugarcoat it, even when saying that this is hard or painful to people who ask can make the listener sometimes feel uncomfortable, but to say like, that's okay. I'm going to tell you how I really feel. I think that's an important thing. And I think, asking for support. I've become sort of like a supreme delegator through all of this and just have figured out how to get, so many people want to help and so many people want to do things. And, I know a lot of people have a hard time sort of accepting help, but at this point in this thing, I am all about, taking advantage of any of the help we can get. Because what I see that as, like if somebody says, can I come do yard work? Absolutely, you can. Because what that says to me is like, that gives me 3 more hours in my week that I can be with Sean and I can be with our daughter. And I can be, doing quality time things that aren't like cleaning out the gutters. Right. And so, taking advantage of, and also I just know that people who give of themselves in that way feel better. Like they love it too. Right. Because they want to feel like they're helping. And so, I would just say like, if you're nervous about taking help or you feel bad or you whatever, just like get over that and just say, yes, please. Thank you. I would love it if you would help. Because sometimes I think, I'm able-bodied. We got this 12-year-old, she could shovel, but no, like if somebody else is happy to shovel and that means the 3 of us can stay inside and play a game together, that's what we should do. That is like a win-win-win all around. And so,
that's 100% sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has been a pleasure.
Oh, it has really been a pleasure to talk to you.
I'm so glad you wanted to join because it's so important to get the story out.
Yes.
And also, you have to give Sean a big high five or hug, whatever you feel like. Just say that we're not just me. We talked about me and my wife before. We're thinking a lot about you and hope you're doing as well as you can in that situation.
Thank you. This has really been a gift, and I think even for your podcast to want to get the caregiver perspective is huge.
It's huge,
right? And so I think that so often things like this just focus on the patient, and so I just really appreciate that you allowed the caregiver perspective to come into this conversation.
We are all part of the same thing.
Yeah,
we are. It's not just. It would be too egoistical to think that it's only about us. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It affects you, our siblings, our parents, our spouses, everybody around us. I mean, we should never forget these people because, as I mentioned before, it matters to us that you're here, and your stories is as important as ours, because in reality, you get to live and tell that story, also.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you will also get some good life experiences that you can bring with you.
Right.
That you can pass on to the next people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something we're in together.
Absolutely. And I just love that, like, we are, in different countries from each other right now, and yet we understand each other on such a deeper level because of what we've been through, despite the distance, And so I just appreciate you and the work that you're doing on this podcast and the conversations that are happening. And
I'm just really happy people want to join.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think people don't get asked to tell their stories enough. And when your stories are this big and important, like it's they got to get out there, right? I think it's both cathartic for the person talking, and it's important for people to hear this. And so I think, again, just like a win-win. So thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to tonight's episode of Life, Death, and Happiness. If you like this, please do us a big favor and subscribe to us on iTunes, Overcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you also give us a good rating, that will be much appreciated. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter and help us spread the word through there. My name is Daniel. I'm signing off. Thank you so much for listening.